Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can I welcome you to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee? I'm Paul Gleeson and I'm chairman of the committee, and I'd like to welcome back Councillor Drayton, who is now fighting fit and ready to go.
I wouldn't say that.
Before we start the meeting, I need to run through a few housekeeping rules. I would like to remind everyone in attendance this evening that the meeting is being streamed on YouTube. Please ensure that you address this meeting that you do so through the microphone system at all times. Please also ensure that you speak into the microphones as close and as clearly as possible. Can you please ensure your mobile phones are turned off? We've no members of the public meeting here tonight, so we can leave the next bit. Finally, please be advised that any abuse or intimidation of any sort will not be tolerated. Any disturbance will result in the meeting being adjourned. Anyone who is deemed to breach these requirements will be warned and asked to refrain, and if behaviour persists, they will be required to leave the meeting. We now move on to the main part of the agenda. Preliminaries. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've got apologies, or we've received apologies from councillors Alison Austin, Richard Austin and Emma Cresswell.
Declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare any interest in respect of any items on tonight's agenda? No.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
just that I sit on both the Black Sluice and with the Forth Drainage Boards.
If that is an interest, then I have to declare the same.
That's fine. You're a council appointee.
I too am a council appointee on Black Sluice, but it's not a prejudice show.
No, it was just everybody. Yeah, thank you. We now move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of July 2025. Please note that the apologies for absence from Councillor Stuart Evans were omitted in error and are now included in the minutes I'm about to sign. Are members happy with me to sign the minutes? I'll sign them at the end. Thank you. We now move to item 1. The first item, as you know, we were going to have the portfolio holder for highways at tonight's meeting. Unfortunately, he is unable to attend. I would like to suggest that we invite him to attend a future meeting and we carry those questions forward. Councillor Izard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, the next meeting with the Anglian Water is going to be quite busy and we might have other agenda items as well. Is there a possibility that we could just have a second meeting of this group, say on Wednesday the 1st of October or Wednesday the 8th of October, and invite highways then, rather than try to fit it onto already extensive agenda?
What do members think? You happy to have an extra meeting? Councillor Pipwood. Yeah.
I personally wouldn't want any more meetings. I've got more meetings coming out my ears than I can care to think of. If it's possible to either have it at a later date, lot later date, or look at the agenda for next time round. If you're going to invite the county councillor, then other things could go somewhere down the line. I think more meetings. I think we've got so many meetings going on and briefings and all the other things. My diary seems to be full of them. So I don't particularly want any more, to be honest. That's
No,
my
I
view.
think maybe as I understand it, Councillor Chain might be out of action for a little while anyway. So maybe we look at our next meeting, we'll see whether we'll have some dates from him and we can decide then, whether we can go on to, I don't think, he would be available for the next meeting anyway. So maybe we play it by ear then. Oh, Councillor Pack.
I too don't want an extra meeting.
No.
And I think the difficulties we have with highways are going to be continuing, so it won't make much difference whether we met with him next week or next month or 2 months' time.
No.
What I would like to ask is whether, with the postponement of his coming, whether we can ask additional questions to the ones already.
Oh yes, no, no, that's fine. No, I'll arrange to have another
round robin.
Another round robin for extra questions. Yeah, no, that's not a problem. And everybody, I'm happy. So, in which, oh, Councillor Gilbert, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Come and sit at the table, mate.
Yeah, just a quick question. I wonder whether or not the portfolio holder for highways is going to be accompanied by an officer, whether there's been any indication as to whether or not that will be the case, or whether he's coming on his own.
As far as I'm aware, it was going to be him by himself. We have previously invited officers and they have refused to attend scrutiny meetings. So, but I think maybe we can, when we try the rearrangements, we ask him if he wants to bring an officer. But we did actually, initially, the idea was to actually have officers here. But they sent back a rather peculiar email in which they said, no, they don't go to scrutiny meetings. They don't even go to scrutiny meetings at county, which I thought was all very peculiar. Councillor Pierpoint. Yeah.
Bear in mind that the previous administration at County Council were not particularly amenable to supporting anything at Boston. I found that working with this new county councillor who's in charge of the highways, a portfolio holder, very amenable, very understanding, and all the complaints and things I've sent to.
Oh yeah, he's been very cooperative with us. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I had proposed, had Councillor Chain been here tonight, to ask him informally whether he could arrange for, his view on that. But yeah, but I'm more than happy to have officers here. I mean, I think it would make sense for him to have officers with him because they can answer the more technical questions. Anybody else? No? Which brings us on to item 2 on the agenda. Which is the flooding investigation report, Wibberton West Road, Park Road, Boston. And Christian is going to give us a report and then we'll see what the discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm presenting this report this evening on behalf of Dale Broughton, who's a portfolio holder, but obviously, unfortunately, Dale was unable to attend this evening. So the report I'm referring to is on page 9 to 14 in your agenda pack. That's the covering report. And then the section 19 flooding report is on pages 15 to 78. So members will recall the devastating flooding that occurred in Boston in the early hours of the 6th of January 2025 and resulted in the internal flooding of 38 residential properties on Wibberton West Road and Park Road in Boston. and indeed the extensive multi-agency response and recovery effort that followed that, in which the council played a key role. Lincolnshire County Council are designated as a lead local flood authority under the Flood and Water Management Act 2010, and this act requires them as a lead local flood authority to conduct an investigation into the causes of a flooding event that results in properties being internally flooded. In this instance, they commissioned GeoSmart Information Limited to discharge this responsibility on their behalf and produce the Section 19 flood investigation report that's in your agenda pack this evening at pages 15 to 78. I hope that members have had the opportunity to read the flood investigation report, which seeks to identify the causes of property flooding. The report provides an overview of the problem, identifies the flooding mechanisms, and most importantly, the relevant risk management authorities and stakeholders with responsibilities for action, and concludes with a list of recommendations, and they're at 5.1 to 5.6 in that report. Whilst the County Council are duty bound as a lead local flood authority to conduct Section 19 reports and to include recommendations to prevent a recurrence, risk management authorities identified as responsible for those recommendations are under no such duty to implement them. The Joint Lincolnshire Flood Risk and Water Management Partnership has an informal role in engaging those risk management authorities and monitoring the delivery of Section 19 report recommendations, but again has no statutory remit to hold those bodies to account. This clearly presents a dilemma for this council, which has a keenly held responsibility for its residents, in particular those whose households remain at risk of flooding and yet have no surety that the risk management authorities identified as having a recommendation in the Section 19 report will actually deliver on them. So I believe this is where this committee may choose to invoke its functions articulated in the constitutional and legal implications section of the committee report on page 12, perhaps adopting an escalatory approach in terms of the formality adopted with our risk management authority partners. So committee may wish to consider as a first step inviting the relevant risk management authorities to attend a future meeting of this committee and to set out their intentions in response to the specific recommendations. In this case, the RMAs that have responsibilities are the Environment Agency, Black Sluice Independent Drainage Board and Lincolnshire County Council. Recognising, however, an invitation from this committee does not oblige those organisations to attend. If this approach does not provide the reassurance nor the progress that members were perhaps expecting, then this committee does have powers to adopt a more formal stance via recommendations to Cabinet and onwards to the lead local flood authority. The lead local flood authority are required to ensure that their overview and scrutiny committee include arrangements to review and scrutinise the exercise by risk management authorities of their functions and responsibilities which affect their area. So this committee may choose at a later date to formulate a recommendation that seeks assurance from the lead local flood authority that they are diligent in the exercise of this function as it applies to the Boston Section 19 report and hold those risk management authorities to account. Thank you, Chairman, and my recommendation on the way forward would be to adopt that sort of escalatory approach, but I'm keen to hear the views of members of this committee.
Thank you. I'll now open up the meeting for discussion. Councillor Pierpoint.
My concern is that, first of all, who holds these bodies to account? Because clearly we've got different organisations here, the risk management people, and we talked about inviting these three people, the Environment Agency and the Black Sluice and the Lincolnshire County Council. All I can see will be a merry dance of no responsibilities, they're their fault, his fault, their fault. I can only see what's going to be happening here, because organisations like this will never admit their guilt, never admit they're wrong, and consequently what happens is you just let a merry dance round in a circle. And really, you know, if we're going to do something proper here, and we're going to be really, you know, show out, you know, that we are interested and keen to find out where this is all going wrong and not allow it to happen again, I think we really ought to, I agree with you, first of all, invite them, but I don't think they'll all come, personally, because nobody likes to be held account, I'm afraid to say, outside of this organisation anyway. And second thing is, you know, what can we do then to seek assurance that this is not going to happen again? It should never happen in the first place if the relevant authorities have got their act together and foreseen some of the problems that are going to occur. I would say most of them got their head in the sand and couldn't be bothered. And that really does worry me about this borough and how we have to rely on other people to provide those services that just don't exist or are just not good enough. And I'm really disappointed in those three organisations, and they ought to be brought here to account, and they ought to be accountable for their actions, or should I say lack of actions. And that's my party piece. Thank you. Christian, I'd like you to sort of give me a view on that, if you don't mind.
I think I sort of expressed my view in my introduction. I mean, we do have scrutiny powers as a local authority, as a district council, and the county council will also have scrutiny powers to hold these risk management authorities to account. And, you know, we have an option. The option's always available to the committee to exercise those powers. But I'm suggesting that perhaps we take an escalatory approach and adopt an informal approach first. And then if members remain dissatisfied with the response they get from those RMAs, then I would suggest that's the time to invoke more formality and escalate it through our executive here to the lead local or flood authority at county council.
Just to clarify, all right, I get your point there. Just to clarify, I need to come back. You talk about reports. Is the county council doing a report, and how many reports are being produced? Just one, or there's several reports being produced for this situation?
There's only this one Section 19 report in relation to Boston,
yeah,
and the flooding that happened in Boston. It was confined, if you recall, to Wibberton West Road and to Park Road. In January of this year, there were multiple flood events across the county that affected properties internally that were flooded, and the county council has a duty to do Section 19 reports on all of those incidents. So whilst there's only one report relating to Boston, the county council, in relation to the January flood events, had multiple Section 19 reports that they're managing through their lead local flood authority responsibilities.
So just for my clarification, then this report that we're reading today is the county council's report, is it?
It is indeed, yes.
Thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Councillor Pryke.
Thank you. I would support Christian's proposal of gradualist approach. Talk to them first and wave a big stick later. I'm very much aware that there is considerable concern in the rest of the county that the new regime of the county council has got rid of the flooding committee, the discrete flooding committee that the county ran before, and have subsumed it into the environment committee, which has a lot of other things to deal with as well. There are quite a number of people that I'm aware of elsewhere in the county who are concerned that the county council is not going to be able to pay enough attention to flooding events because of that. So let's pursue the agencies ourselves, but maybe express our concern to the county council that we're going to need to work together to get these things sorted. Thank you. Yeah.
Anybody else wish to speak?
I will just come back on Councillor Pryke's point. The responsibility to that's on Lincolnshire County Council's lead local flood authorities vested in the Local Government Act to scrutinise the roles and responsibilities of risk management authorities. How they choose to exercise that function and through what committee is a matter for them to consider. But they are duty bound as a lead local flood authority to hold those risk management authorities, RMAs, to account through a mechanism. But that's all I would add, Chairman.
Councillor Whitney.
Just a curiosity, yeah, so 38 properties, yeah, 24 of them have received 1,000 claim. What about 14 the rest? Have we offered them? Have they refused, or maybe I just missed that part?
Thank you for your question. It was at the behest of the then leader of this council when the flooding happened to offer a discretionary grant to residents who'd been impacted by flooding. It was the responsibility of those householders that were affected by flooding to apply for that grant. So clearly there were some number that did choose to apply for that grant and some that didn't. It was well publicised at the time. There are a number of reasons why perhaps householders chose not to apply for the grant, but the grant scheme was discretionary and it is now closed.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. As most of you know, I was actually there at 8 o'clock the morning of the flooding to go and help. To be seeing 90-year-old women living on their own, losing everything in their bungalows is heartbreaking. And just something as simple as supplying sandbags was at the time denied them because they said, oh, we don't need them because it's not going to flood again. But their answer to me was, but they told us that this time and it still did. Something as simple as sandbags to reassure them wasn't provided until later on, and things like that matter, you know. It's they did in the end bring them, they did, but they had to be asked for them. And I think that it was chaos. But no, I just think that there is a lot to be answered to here. I really do. I really do.
Councillor Welbury.
Read Smart's report, and it's actually very well put together, which is not very often I say that. And it was just a perfect storm of circumstance. And the recommendations are all very reasonable. I agree with Councillor Pierpoint and Councillor Bright that we need to take this further, really. Within the recommendations, one of them is that the property owners themselves implement flood resilience measures. Well, we all know how that's going to turn out. They need some guidance and help. And if you've read the report, you'll see it was just a catalogue of errors and from the organisations that we look to look after our flood defences. They're just not interested, really, from not building up the walls enough on the banks to not having the part for the station, wasn't it, to be mended. Nobody seems to care. It's all, like you say, passing the buck. And then it all came together in this perfect storm, which you saw, Patsy. It's not acceptable. So I do think we should use every power that we've got to push this further, because the poor residents are left now with a recommendation that they sort themselves out. And how are they going to do that? It's just not acceptable. Thank you.
Councillor Gilbert.
Well, Councillor Welbury's pretty much said everything I was going to say, actually. This is a flood that really shouldn't have happened. If people had been more diligent in their roles and ensured that everything was maintained as it should be, it wouldn't have occurred. But looking down the list of recommendations, these recommendations do appear to be quite expensive. And I don't think will be within the capacity of most of the residents to actually pay for them. So we need to have conversations about how we're going to ensure that people's properties are flood resilient if necessary, if we're not actually able to ensure that these properties aren't going to flood again. So I think I take Councillor Pryke's point. Let's start with a sort of the soft approach. but let's sort of ramp things up if we're required to do so on behalf of our residents.
Councillor Bright?
Very quickly on the recommendations, page 54 onwards. I think a good start has been made because there is a new flood warning service for that area, which I think all members have had notice of. Certainly I have, and I live 2 and a bit miles away from it. So I'm impressed that the EA has done that at any rate. The other ones, I think, are still work in progress, but live in hope. And we'll come back to this in 6 months' time.
Councillor Welbury?
Yeah, I mean, on page 48, there's some dispute as to whether the EA actually took into account the tidal conditions with their modelling, which I find absolutely outstanding. I can't believe that. And that's why they said that the event was greater than one in 1,000, but without taking into account the tidal, which is, Boston is a port. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, that alone wants to be questioned. Who's doing this modelling and why wasn't that included? Thank you.
Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, everything that everyone has said is right. Being part of both drainage boards, Witham Forth and Black Sluice, there's a lot of talk about the cuts at the EA, certain further away bits that now need to move to the IDB control rather than EA, and EA's funding being cut and cut and cut really, I think, is the crux of this problem, is it not? With the decommissioned pumping station being EA property. My views.
Anybody else wish to speak? No, I think in general we've covered all the points. I think the stepped approach is the right way, because I think we're better to come with recommendations from knowledge than not. So what we need to do is, first of all, call these agencies in to explain the report, but also to improve our knowledge of what can be done. And then from that, if need be, we go to Cabinet with recommendations. But also, and I can only put this slightly crudely, I mean, as we know, there was various flooding areas in Lincolnshire at the time. But I think our duty to our own residents is to make sure that we sit on top of this and we make it actually easier for them to deal with us or to deal with it first. So I think we need to be sitting there on top of it, keeping our, them knowing that we are keeping a watchful eye on this, and then, coming up with, but with recommendations based on it, because I'm not too sure I would feel confident in coming up with a set of recommendations on this report without asking more questions. And so I think that is the way forward. And then just something has just come into my mind, and it's not quite to do with this, but I'm going to mention it. Do we know whether the new lock gate for the docks have been installed yet? We had new taller lock gates arrived in about 2019. Last I heard, they still hadn't been installed, which means all of the work that was done with the barrier and so on, if we do have the tidal surge, they're just going to go through the hole in the docks. So I would like us, just if we can, just to maybe try and find that out as well. Because obviously, again, I think we would be negligent of us if they actually haven't yet been installed and we're sitting there. But anyway, Councillor Pierpoint.
Just a couple of things. What annoyed me a bit about that situation was that the council here went out to help, and we more or less got the blame for it, I think, because that's the problem. Was everybody thought the council was at fault, although we offered the residents this £1,000 compensation, and we went out there, and some councillors were there on the day and the time. But unfortunately, the other 3 organisations didn't get a mention, or very little mention, and this council got blamed for it. The public were blaming this council, I think. That's the problem we've got. The second thing is, what worries me is, what other areas of Boston is likely to go in the same way that this area has gone in January? Because the way the weather's going, the way that global warming's going, the way that the rain's going, and we're getting more of it. And what my concern is, what part of Boston next will have the same issues, and why are we not looking at that now to prevent a further problem occurring in the future? And that's another point I think we should be asking these people when we meet them, if we do.
Thank you. I think Councillor Pierpoint makes some really valid points, and I think that question needs to be directed and asked of those risk management authorities when we invite them in. And clearly we have to understand that the flooding that affected Witherton West Road and Park Road was a very distinct issue, as you can see from the report. I think there are 5 recommendations which apply to, in essence, the Environment Agency, the Independent Drainage Board, and Councillor Welbury's feedback in terms of the quality of the report and the simplicity of it in explaining what is a complex set of events that led to that flooding, I think is a point well made, and I would agree. I think the report's set out very clearly. So we need to be very focused in terms of the reasons why this event happened are articulated through that report, and we need to be mindful not to apply those same lessons to other events that might occur, because they were a very unique set of circumstances. If I may just return to the point around the lock gates, I think it's just important to make that distinction that the flooding event we're talking about today has had nothing to do with the Boston Barrier or the lock gates. But that said, I know that there is a project in play to install those lock gates. What I don't have is any detail, but I do know people that do. So if you wish to invite somebody back to a future meeting to talk about that particular project, or even to a members briefing, an all members briefing, then I'm happy to facilitate that for you, Chairman.
If we can, I think it just would be Councillor Pierpoint first.
Sorry, I was interrupting you, Chairman. You were speaking. My thoughts are that if we're going to invite these people back, or invite these people to come and see us, these 3 organisations, I think we should get the questions ready, prepared, and then send them to them and say, these are the sort of questions we're going to ask you, because nobody likes to be shot up in the dark and come along to a meeting and not know what's going to be said beforehand. So if we're going to do that, I think we should send the questions to these people in advance, let them see what the questions are. Hopefully they'll come and talk us through it. But if they can't or don't want to, we want some answers to those questions. Because I think it's important we structure the questions to get the answers that we're looking for, and we don't want to be here firing at them at 2 barrels, otherwise they won't come. And that's the sort of meeting we don't want, but we want a meeting where they are aware of the questions that we're asking, they've got the answers ready, and they come and they listen to what we've got to say, and they give us a little bit more to the questions that we're asking. All right, that's what my view.
Councillor Welbury. Councillor Gilbert. I'm easy.
You know what it's going to say.
Turn it on. Yes, you're right, Councillor Pierpoint, and I think what we ought to do as well is ask the residents if they've got any questions, but not have them ask. We'll ask them for them. But I think you're right. We were blamed for this. We ran a coffee morning as well, didn't we, to raise money? These other organisations weren't mentioned, and we owe it to our residents to show them that we're on the front foot here, and definitely get any questions that the residents would like us to ask. Thank you.
Councillor Gilbert, then Councillor Prank.
Yes, thank you. There's been mention of the barrier and also mention of the high tide. It is quite clear that at one point Lincolnshire was very well known for the quality of its water management, and over the last few years the quality of that water management seems to have been affected by something, which I think we need to get to the bottom of. I think it's also important, given that we are using gravity flow, or we used gravity flow rather than pumps to drain the water from the South 40 foot, that we look at whether or not the high tide impacted on the ability of the water to flow out quickly, or whether it was impeded by the fact there was a high tide, and therefore the water couldn't clear as quickly as it should have done.
Councillor Pryke.
This is not a secret, but at the last meeting of the Black Sluice IDB, a relatively senior officer from the EA came from Peterborough and was quite helpful to the IDB about what was going on. Now, those of us who are members haven't seen the draft minutes yet, let alone the agreed minutes for the meeting. And we won't until probably after the Joint Works Committee in early October. But I think with the IDB's permission, if we circulate those minutes to members around here, that will be quite useful to us to inform us about where we go with our gradualist approach to the 3 other organisations. I don't know if Stuart would agree with me on that.
Thank you. Yes. Going back to Councillor Pierpoint's thing about the questions in advance. I mean, to my mind, that should always be the way with scrutiny. I mean, it's far too easy to have this really clever question you want to catch them out with, but then the answer to that clever question is going to be, sorry, I can't answer it tonight. We'll answer in a letter, and that isn't scrutiny. That letter arrives after we've come to our decision, which is why with tonight, when we were talking about highways, we asked members to send their questions in advance, so that if there were any technical issues within those questions, we can have proper answers and therefore do proper scrutiny. And as Mr. Allen says, obviously fluvial flooding and tidal surge are very different sorts of flooding. And the bad flood we had in, was it 2013? That was a tidal surge. So the analogy I was told at the time, it's like you sitting in an overfilled bath. The water comes up at the same level everywhere. The problem is if there's any little holes, all the water goes through it. Obviously with fluvial flooding, you've got water running off of the walls and so on, the hills, and it's building up. And so if you have blockages, if you can't get it away quick enough, you have the flooding there. So they're different causes and different things. But I just do think it would be remiss of us just not to be on top of all these issues for the people of Boston. Yeah, they're outside our control. We can't actually make anybody comfortable, but I hope they will want to. I think that I'm pretty certain they will want to. But I do think we keep it as one of our priorities, so we make sure it stays at the top of their priorities. So anybody else wishing to speak? If not, the recommendation is that we initially invite the 3 bodies in to address us. I suggest again we try and have some online discussion, sort of email things prior to that, so we can work out the questions to make sure we're asking sensible questions that are going to take us forward. And then from that, we can decide whether we go forward with recommendations. Thanks. So members happy with that? Sorry? Yeah, well, we'll, prior to the meeting, we will, we'll ask for questions. But also, I think we do need to make sure that, we have a little bit of assistance in making sure we're not missing issues. Because it is quite a technical report, and it's something that we're not experts on. So, we need just to make sure that, we are top of it. But thank you for your input. I think actually it's a good discussion. I think what we're doing here is important. Thank you for that. So we move on to the next business, which is our work programme. Because we lost item 1, and technically it's not on the agenda, but I don't care. We're going to have a brief discussion on the task and finish group on the town centre, where that's going to go as part of the work programme. So this is part of the work programme still, but Councillor Pryke, who's chair of that committee, I think would just like to bring us up to speed. And then any other members of the committee want to have a 2 pence.
Many of us will know what the task and finish group has been doing or trying to do about the town centre in, I think, 4 meetings, 4 proper meetings. We did have some difficulty getting officers or officer to attend, but that was solved eventually, and Pranali Parekh came to one of our meetings. Dale Broughton, as the then portfolio holder, came to a very early meeting, but we hadn't really formulated many ideas at that one. We have, in effect, a shopping list of things we are concerned about, which I think, and other members of the TNF group can speak to this, I think will turn many of them into recommendations to this scrutiny committee, for this scrutiny committee to review them and probably pass them on to the cabinet for consideration. Now, I emailed my colleagues this afternoon with the, as it were, the shopping list that I've been working with for the last few weeks. And it's still a work in progress because we have outstanding questions to the officers about, for example, have you ever taken up a government scheme to change vacant retail premises into residential ones? And we haven't had an answer to that yet. And Pranali is on holiday until next week, so I don't think we're going to get a response for another week or so. But for example, the shopping list that I circulated to members this afternoon included our understanding of what the town centre is, and our understanding as members is quite different to what the officers have been working on, in as much as we think Asda is in the town centre. They didn't. We thought that Main Ridge East on the other side of John Adams Way is in the town centre. They didn't. Various anomalies like that. And so we've redrawn the map of the town centre, and we'll share that with everyone. We spent a lot of time talking about empty shops and other town centre premises, because it's not just shops that are empty, but it's other businesses which are no longer there. And we've got empty premises and we've got upstairs empty places. And we're concerned about that and want to encourage their better use. So we've asked about incentives through the business rate system to get them reoccupied, and how long people can get away with not paying business rates on empty premises, so on. That will form part of our recommendations, I'm sure. We have also asked about current or expected grants for improving or beautifying buildings in the town centre. The town fund money, for example, did up a number of premises. The notable example at the moment is Shodfriars Hall, but there are other places which could do with something. And we wanted to know whether there's any money available for that or likely to be available in the future. We've talked about signage, in particular, the inadequacy of some of the signage, particularly in the marketplace. The finger posts probably need renewing. Street nameplates all over the place need, I won't say tarting up, repainting. We don't particularly want them to be replaced with modern plastic things. We'd like the existing metal ones to be refurbished where at all possible. That'll almost certainly be one of our recommendations. We're concerned that the Tourist Information Centre in the Guildhall is not open for long enough. And its offering for tourism in the town is probably not good enough. And that is largely because Boston Council hasn't produced proper leaflets promoting the town for a few years now. And they have run out of things. They would like to have decent leaflets, but as far as we can tell, there's no budget for it. So we'll probably be recommending something along those lines. We are concerned about the lack of promotion of Boston in neighbouring areas. For example, Skegness and Spalding have nothing about Boston in their libraries or tourist information centres. I haven't spoken to East Lindsey, but I have spoken to South Holland, and they'd be only too willing to take whatever we can give them. And they said, and can we give you some of our leaflets? And I said, well, of course we can. The Guildhall is getting a new display unit. So I don't think it's this week, I think it's next week it's due. And we're going to have capacity to provide much more information about us and everyone else soon. But Boston hasn't got the leaflets. which is regrettable. There are other leaflets for example, Fidel House and the walks you can get, some of the history work, some of the heritage opportunities. The stump has quite good range of its own, but I think we feel collectively that our council is letting the town down by not doing enough. So that'll be one thing. We are concerned about the lighting, the type of lighting we have in the town centre, whether the buildings, the appropriate buildings, are floodlit properly and so on. And this came up especially after that, was it called illuminated, the night of displays on buildings. And a number of us made comments that we could do far better than we do at the moment with our rather good buildings. And we have the example, the Canucks shop in Bargate is architecturally superb, but we don't make anything of it. And we would like Boston Council to explore whether it will be interested in illuminating the better buildings better, if that's English. It's not very good English, never mind. We would quite like the electronic bus information to be extended to other bus stops around the town, not just the bus station, wherever the bus station is going to end up eventually, particularly Marketplace. And we would quite like that stuff about the next bus arriving is going to be to extend to train information as well, so that people don't have to go to the station or go online to find out about delays in trains or whatever else, and they know there's a 10:20 train to Nottingham coming up or whatever, that sort of thing. And the last thing on my list is that we're concerned about traffic flow and obviously congestion around John Adams, Liquor Pond Street, Queen Street, Sleaford Road, and so on. And we wanted to explore whether traffic light priorities and timings could be changed, and whether signage can be changed to assist traffic flow and decrease delays for everyone. There are a number of other things which I didn't put on the shopping list, and my colleagues will add to it, I'm sure, in time, but that's broadly the way we're going at the moment. I would hope that we could have a report for scrutiny before the end of the year, that scrutiny can give it or discuss it and pass on other recommendations to Cabinet before the end of the financial year. But it's up to our members. So,
Councillor Pierpoint.
First of all, I'd like to say to Councillor Pryke and his team, well done. That's quite a very comprehensive list of things there that you identified, and I agree 100% with everything you've said. So congratulations, well done. I've always criticised this council for the lack of marketing. The marketing has never been strong here. Yes, we've got comms and they put nice press releases out and social media stuff, but the general marketing of this council has never been strong. And I've been a councillor 6 years on and off. And when I first came into this council, I criticised it then, I'm criticising it today. It has not got any better. The marketing lacks, this borough lacks marketing. So you're right there. And I think, I understand we are short of leaflets with different places for people to promote different parts of this borough and some of the historic buildings and things that we've got. And that really ought to be a priority. You know, what we want is to encourage people to come into this town and spend money, visit different places, and we haven't got that material to do it. And it's interesting when you talk about going to Skegness or to Spalding. Yes, they're marketing everything, but we're not marketing anything. And we want to market ourselves to neighbouring towns and villages. We want to make sure people come here and enjoy what we've got to offer. The history and the heritage here is fantastic, as we know. We just don't market ourselves very well. And I think the quicker we get somebody doing that, the better. But well done for your team for what you said. Well done.
Yep.
I was rushing through the shopping list and I didn't mention our concerns about rubbish or rubbish bins and rubbish around the place. Location and emptying of bins, whether we need more, that sort of thing. I also didn't mention our concern about the approaches to the centre, in particular, getting from the station to the marketplace or vice versa, and the road approaches to the town centre. I noticed, I think it was yesterday, people were cutting down some of the bushes on the other side of Liquor Pond roundabout, going towards Spalding Road. And I assume that's County Council, but I believe we've been pressing for that for some time, and maybe it's starting now. Is it? Okay. Is it? Okay. But we're concerned about approaches to the town centre and how shabby we look in places.
Councillor Martin.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've mentioned before about the advertising for our events and things like that. That should all be advertised in Skegness, Spalding, and further afield. At the train stations, we should have leaflets at the train stations, in every hotel, and maybe, if any at all possible, organise coach trips from Skegness to Boston for our events or for our market days and things like that. We should be, if we could organise certain coach trips during the holiday season, I'm sure people would come, just, you know, to come and see all our lovely things like the stump, etc. But we do need to advertise more. We really do.
Come and see the mayor as well.
Yeah, and his sidekick.
So yeah, I again, I think there's some wonderful work, and I think now it's important that, you know, we make it known to officers that we want to prioritise this, so that you don't have issues getting the information you need. Because again, basically, you know, we're not going to be here in a couple of years' time, and whilst hopefully we will get a town council, yeah, we do need to make sure, I think, we leave the town as well as we can, that we put the investment in that we do need to put in to making the town attractive. But obviously, I don't want to discuss what we're going to be discussing later, but I do congratulate on their work. And, you know, I think, you know, we just make sure if you do have issues getting reports, that you come to me, and we'll see what we can do. But I think it's important that, you know, by the spring of next year, we've looked at it all and got the recommendations from the cabinet and all of that. So, yeah. Anybody else? Councillor Evan? Oh no, sorry, Councillor Gilbert.
Just to make the point that I've picked up the portfolio for the town centre from Councillor Dale, Councillor Broughton. And it's a really complicated portfolio, to be honest with you. There's numerous elements to it, and I'm sort of slowly working my way through it to try and work out the various ways, all the different pots of funding, all the various groups, you know, intersect to try to bring life to very many of the things that Councillor Pryke has referred to in his very informative presentation this evening. Virtually everything that he said, bar one or two small items, have been covered by either the Plan for Neighbourhoods or the new business association that we're in the process of creating, or the town deal board or whatever. There's lots of positive energy to try and do something about the town centre. I welcome the comments about the boundary. I think the boundary itself is far too limiting. The town centre is a far larger footprint than we have been working with in the past. And there are other partners we can sort of key into to try and, you know, do some of the work that you've referred to, particularly around things like road signs and things of that sort, and maybe managing the traffic through the town centre slightly bit better than we currently do. There is money around, and you know, we're looking at ways to ensure we can access that for the benefit of the town centre and the market. So yeah, we are doing things, and there's, as I say, some positive energy behind these ideas.
Thank you. So obviously we're happy that obviously the task force group will continue. It has our full support, and, you know, as I say, Councillor Pryke.
Pretty minor stuff, and maybe self-congratulatory, but of course Councillor Gilbert has been out painting lampposts rather than putting flags on them.
I have been painting lampposts. Don't tell the county council.
Okay. One item that's not strictly related to the task and finish group is I had a notification last week that all the forthcoming planned meetings for the town centre strategy board had been cancelled, and we were due to be told what's going to happen. And I inquired today what's happening, and because the director Pranali is away on holiday till next week. No one can tell me what's happening. So I have a slight concern that the Town Centre Strategy Board, which has been working very well, may be having a bit of a hiccup at the moment. But the portfolio holder might be able to help.
Yeah, it's just we've just sort of tried to streamline things. What I found when I took over the portfolio, there was an awful lot of duplication. Lots of people doing exactly the same thing, and there didn't seem to be any sort of strategic interface that made any sense to anybody. It was just duplication. And so what I've tried to do is sort of slightly rebrand things so that, you know, the Town Centre Strategy Board has a more operational, tactical role, and then there's more strategic stuff going on elsewhere, rather than everybody trying to do the same thing, and it gets incredibly complicated. So that there is still a meeting that will be rebranded, not the Town Centre Strategy Board, but something else, and those meetings will continue.
Thank you. So everybody happy? Anybody else? No?
Yes, I'd just like to look at the work programme. You know, you've got this pending confirmations here. It would be a good idea if we could have some sort of idea what or when these might be slotted into the calendar, because if you look from January onwards, it's very thin on each month what's happening between then and the end of April, but yet you've got the pending confirmations down there. But what month are they? When are these going to appear? Have you got any rough ideas, or a good idea if we could have some dates in there that just gives us a bit of a thought of when they might be happening?
Yeah, I'll take those in action.
Because in February time, there's nothing, according to this, 10th of February, nothing on at all. And I just think they ought to be programmed in some way so we can see what the balance of tasks or work programs are month by month. That's what I'm coming from, that point of view. Okay, thank you. So
yeah, so anybody else, anything they want to add to the work programme at the moment? No. Next month's meeting looks quite a good one. We do have Anglian Water coming, their public relations team, and their expert on actual burst pipes. And we've also got the Road Safety Partnership. So, and again, you know, if people have questions for these things, you know, particularly technical questions, you know, it is just so much better to, you know, pump them in beforehand. Ray will make sure they know them, and then you're at the meeting, we actually get an answer, and we don't get some future letter. But if everybody else is happy, I'm happy to close the meeting. Thanks very much for your time. I think that was actually quite good. Thank you, Ray. That was actually constructive. Yeah. Yeah.